Hollywood. Get ready to question everything you think you know. Number 1. The Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, the unsolved nightmare. We begin not with a star, but with an aspiring one. A young woman who chased the promise of Hollywood and instead found a nightmare so horrific it permanently scarred the soul of Los Angeles. Her name was Elizabeth Short. The press would call her the Black Dahlia. The date was January 15, 1947. In the then undeveloped Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles, a mother walking with her child made a discovery that would stop the city cold. Lying on a vacant lot, brutally mutilated and completely drained of blood, was the body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. She had been deliberately cut completely in half at the waist, a procedure done with surgical precision. Her face had been sliced into a terrifying Glasgow smile. Her body showed signs of torture that suggested pure premeditated sadism. This was not a crime of passion. This was an act of calculated theatrical horror. Elizabeth Short had arrived in Hollywood months earlier, drawn by the same siren song of fame that pulls millions west. She was waitressing, looking for her break, and spending her final nights bouncing between bars and friends' apartments. She was a beautiful girl, but she was entirely disposable to the machine. When the Los Angeles Police Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation descended on the case, they were met with immediate chaos. The press fixation was unlike anything the city had ever seen. The nicknames stuck, the headlines screamed, and the public became obsessed. But the volume of attention did not translate into arrests. According to original FBI files, the investigation quickly spiraled. Dozens of people confessed, a bizarre phenomenon often seen in high-profile serial cases. Police interviewed over 150 men. They searched hundreds of homes. They followed thousands of leads. But every path led to a dead end. There were suspects: a prominent local surgeon with a penchant for sadism, a well-known hotel owner, even a former military doctor. Each theory had its proponents. Each suspect had plausible, yet ultimately inconclusive evidence against them. The truth was buried under the weight of the city's obsession. What truly sets the Black Dahlia case apart is the sheer theatricality of the presentation. The body was scrubbed, posed, and left as a horrifying, unmistakable message. A message that investigators never fully decoded. Was it a message to the police, to a rival, or just the final grotesque fantasy of a killer who believed they were untouchable? The case remains officially unsolved to this day. The original investigators retired, haunted by the one that got away. Elizabeth Short's dreams ended in a vacant lot, and her murderer vanished into the noir shadows of post-war Los Angeles. It became the textbook example of a perfect murder, a reminder that in Hollywood, even the most glamorous promises can lead to the darkest places. Number 2. Peg Entwistle, the tragic symbol of Hollywood dreams. In the vast lexicon of Hollywood lore, no death is more symbolic, more heartbreakingly poetic than that of Peg Entwistle. She wasn't a megastar. She was a stage actress from England who came to America with talent, ambition, and a belief that she could conquer the movies. Her story is the stark, tragic counterpoint to the American dream. The date was September 16, 1932. At just 24 years old, Peg was at a tipping point. She had achieved some success on Broadway, but had failed to make the jump to the silver screen. She had been given a minor role in a film called 13 Women, but her part was almost entirely cut in post-production. The industry had chewed her up and was spitting her out. On that night, according to reports, she walked away from her uncle's home in Beechwood Canyon. She was carrying a handbag that contained a short note and her purse. Her destination was perhaps the most iconic landmark in all of Los Angeles, the Hollywoodland Sign. 2 days later, on September 18th, a hiker discovered a woman's shoe, jacket, and purse near the base of the H of the massive sign. Inside the purse was the note, chillingly succinct. "I am afraid I am a coward. I am sorry for everything. If I had only done this thing a long time ago, it would have saved a lot of pain. P.E." The police were called. They looked down and found Peg Entwistle's body at the bottom of the 50-foot ravine below the letter. The official ruling was suicide by jumping. The irony, the crushing cruelty of her final act was immediate. She had climbed the maintenance ladder of the symbol she had come to worship, only to fall from its height. She ended her life under the gaze of the very name she had hoped would grant her fame. A cruel twist was reported days later. A letter had arrived at her uncle's house after her death. It was from the Beverly Hills Playhouse, offering her the lead role in a new stage production. The character she was set to play? A woman who commits suicide. Peg Entwistle's death became an instant, morbid symbol. It crystallized the dark side of ambition, the devastating reality of failure in a town that only celebrates success. Her final jump was a silent, desperate scream against the indifference of the system. The story is often repeated, becoming a warning shot to every hopeful newcomer who steps off the bus at Union Station. While officially closed, the tragedy of Peg Entwistle remains less a mystery of how she died, and more a mystery of what Hollywood did to her mind and her spirit to make the fall seem like the only way out. She is the silent ghost of the Hollywood dream. Number 3. The Death in the Garage. Thelma Todd was known as the Ice Cream Blonde and the Hot Toddy. She was a vivacious, beautiful comedic actress, a bona fide star of the early 1930s, working alongside names like the Marx Brothers. She even owned a wildly popular restaurant in Malibu known as Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe. She was living the high life. That life ended abruptly in the garage beneath her own cafe. The date was December 16, 1935. Thelma Todd was found slumped over the steering wheel of her custom Lincoln Phaeton inside the enclosed garage of her home. The engine was off, but the key was in the ignition. The cause of death was officially ruled as accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, but almost nothing about the scene added up. The first major red flag: Thelma Todd's face was bruised and bloody. She had a broken nose and deep gashes. If she had simply fallen asleep in a running car, where did the signs of a violent struggle come from? Police suggested she slipped and hit her face on the steering wheel, a clumsy explanation that satisfied no one. The second red flag: the car was found in the wrong gear. Witnesses noted the car was in gear, which meant the ignition would have been on, and the car would have been running when she entered the garage. Yet the engine was cold, and the gas tank was nearly empty. The third and most explosive red flag: Thelma Todd was deeply connected to the criminal underworld. It was widely known that she was being pressured by mobsters to allow illegal gambling operations to run out of the upstairs floor of her popular cafe. Her ex-husband, Pat DeKiko, a notorious agent with mob ties, was also a primary person of interest. Just hours before her death, she was at a party thrown by the Mask of Zorro director, Stanley Fields. She was dropped off at her apartment complex around 3 a.m., but never entered. What happened in the crucial hours between 3 a.m. and when her body was discovered on Monday morning?
Investigators theorized Thelma was either forced into the garage and murdered elsewhere, or she was pressured in the garage and died resisting her assailants. The official ruling of accidental poisoning was quickly met with public suspicion and an aggressive campaign by journalists to dig deeper. They believed the Los Angeles authorities were under pressure to close the case and avoid a messy mob trial involving Hollywood power brokers. The inquest returned to the original verdict, closing the door to any further investigation. But the public and many modern researchers remain convinced. Thelma Todd didn't slip. She didn't accidentally kill herself trying to stay warm. She knew too much. She resisted the wrong people. Her death in that sealed, dark garage remains a suffocating symbol of the deadly
intersection between Hollywood glamour and organized crime. Number 4. George Reeves, The Curse of Superman. To an entire generation, George Reeves was Superman. His earnest, powerful portrayal of the Man of Steel in the 1950s television series Adventures of Superman made him one of the most recognizable faces in the world. He was the embodiment of American virtue. Then, the hero died, not in a battle with Lex Luthor, but in his own bedroom under utterly bewildering circumstances. The date was June 16, 1959. At 1:30 a.m., a single gunshot rang out from the upstairs bedroom of Reeves' home in Benedict Canyon. The star was found naked, lying on his bed, dead from a bullet wound to the head. Lying between his feet was his German Luger pistol. The official ruling was swift and conclusive: suicide. But almost immediately the controversy began. The evidence at the scene seemed to contradict every element of the police's final report. First, George Reeves was left-handed. The Luger was found on his right side. Second, there were no fingerprints on the gun at all, suggesting it'd been wiped clean or the killer had worn gloves. Third, the bullet casing was found under the body, not near the weapon, and the bullet itself was lodged in the ceiling. Forensics experts later questioned how the recoil of the heavy Luger could have resulted in a shell casing placement that defied physics. Then there was the atmosphere of the house. 5 people were in the house that night: Reeves' fiancée, Lenore Lemon, 2 other couples, and an unnamed guest. Yet only one, Lemon, was questioned extensively. She claimed to be taking a shower when the shot went off. The other guests offered confusing, contradictory statements. One later admitted they were told to lie by Lemon. The most compelling theory of murder points directly at Toni Mannix. She was the wife of MGM studio fixer Eddie Mannix and Reeves' longtime secret mistress. Toni was a powerful, possessive, and notoriously volatile figure. Reeves had recently broken off the affair to marry Lemon. The Mannixes were known to use intimidation and violence to fix problems for the studio. The suicide theory was rooted in the idea that Reeves was depressed about his career, a popular narrative pushed by the studio. He was typecast. He couldn't escape the Superman costume. But his friends, family, and colleagues testified he was in good spirits, planning his future and excited about upcoming projects. The Curse of Superman narrative took hold, but the facts pointed to a cover-up. The mother of George Reeves hired her own investigator, who concluded her son had been murdered. But by then, the official story was cemented. The paperwork was filed. George Reeves, the man who could stop a speeding train, was gunned down in his own home. The case remains officially closed as a suicide, but the questions about the pistol, the witnesses, and the powerful forces that may have wanted him silenced continue to echo. The truth, it seems, was not as super as the legend. Number 5. Jayne Mansfield, the crash that launched a myth. Jayne Mansfield was the epitome of 1950s and 60s sex appeal, a bombshell who challenged Marilyn Monroe for the crown of Hollywood's ultimate blonde icon. She was a brilliant publicist for herself, known for her flamboyant outfits, her pink mansion, and her unapologetic pursuit of fame. Her death was as sudden, violent, and myth-enshrouded as her life. The date was June 29, 1967.
At approximately 2:45 a.m., Jayne Mansfield, her lawyer Sam Brody, and their driver, Ronnie Harrison, were traveling from Biloxi, Mississippi to New Orleans for a television interview. Mansfield's 3 children were asleep in the back seat. They were driving on U.S. Route 90, a 2-lane road near Slidell, Louisiana. Ahead of them, a slow-moving tractor-trailer truck was spraying an anti-mosquito fog. The driver, in the pre-dawn darkness and thick fog, did not see the back of the massive truck. The speeding car slammed directly into the rear of the trailer at full highway speed. The impact was catastrophic. The car wedged entirely underneath the back of the high-riding trailer. All 3 adults in the front seat, Mansfield, Brody, and Harrison, were killed instantly due to severe head trauma. Miraculously, the 3 children in the back seat survived with only minor injuries. The case, while officially ruled an accidental highway fatality, became instantly mired in gruesome rumors and persistent myths. The most widely reported and entirely false myth was that Jayne Mansfield was decapitated in the crash. The truth was that the force of the impact had torn off the top part of the car, and the trauma to Mansfield's head was so severe that it created the illusion of decapitation, a story sensationalized by the press to terrifying effect. This shocking detail cemented the crash as a cultural horror story. But the real mystery lies in the immediate fallout. Mansfield's life was volatile. She was in a relationship with Sam Brody, who was known for his violent temper and constant legal troubles. Just months before the crash, Mansfield had publicly claimed she had feared for her life and believed Brody was trying to kill her. Furthermore, she had been a longtime client of Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. Mansfield was a devout believer in the occult, and LaVey had reportedly warned her of her impending death. In the wake of the crash, the story was twisted into a narrative of a satanic curse or an unholy sacrifice, fueled by LaVey's own self-promotion and the public's thirst for the macabre. While law enforcement never pursued anything other than a tragic accident due to driver error, the persistent rumors, the beheading, the curse, the troubled life ensure that Jayne Mansfield's final moments remain wrapped in Hollywood's darkest, most sensational myths. Her death, though technically explained, serves as a dark testament to the power of a horrifying story. Number 6. Marilyn Monroe, the end of the Golden Era. If Hollywood has a patron saint of tragedy, it is Marilyn Monroe. Her name is synonymous with beauty, vulnerability, and the devastating price of fame. Her death marked the true, definitive end of Hollywood's Golden Era, and it remains arguably the most contested death in modern history. Found on the morning of August 5, 1962, though she died late on August 4th, Marilyn was found by her housekeeper and her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, in her Brentwood home. She was lying face down, naked, on her bed, a telephone receiver clutched in her hand. The cause of death was ruled a probable suicide due to acute barbiturate pot poisoning. An empty bottle of sleeping pills was found nearby. Yet the world refused to accept the finality of the verdict. The initial investigation was immediately sloppy and compromised. The housekeeper, Eunice Murray, gave shifting timelines. The police were called in long after the doctor and the publicist were already on the scene. Most critically, the toxicology report showed an immense amount of barbiturates in her system, enough to kill 10 people, but there was no trace of the pills in her stomach. This single, glaring medical contradiction launched 1,000 theories. How did the pills enter her system if not by mouth? The most enduring and darkest conspiracy theories involve the Kennedy family. Marilyn was known to have had affairs with both President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. It is alleged that Marilyn kept detailed diaries documenting state secrets she learned from the brothers. She was threatening to go public. The theory suggests she was not only silenced to prevent a sex scandal, but also to prevent a national security crisis. Did she die by a fatal, administered enema? Did a cleanup crew enter her home that night to destroy evidence and administer the poison? Numerous high-ranking officials were tied to the house that night, including Kennedy associate Peter Lawford, who was making frantic phone calls. Journalists and investigators later raised serious questions about LAPD's handling of the case, alleging pressure from the highest levels of government to classify the death as a simple suicide. Decades later, a formal review of the case was ordered, but it concluded that without new evidence, the suicide ruling would stand. Marilyn Monroe's death is the ultimate Hollywood mystery because it sits at the nexus of celebrity, power, and politics. Was she a fragile woman who took her own life out of despair, or was she a liability to the most powerful family in America and therefore a victim of murder and cover-up? The question remains, who was Marilyn calling when she died with the phone in her hand? The line was cut forever, leaving her final truth unreachable.
Number 7. Bruce Lee, the sudden silence of a legend. Bruce Lee was not just a martial artist, he was a cultural phenomenon. He bridged the East and West, shattering stereotypes and redefining action cinema forever. At the height of his fame, the global launch of Enter the Dragon was just around the corner. He was untouchable, invincible. Then, in a single afternoon, the legend vanished. The date was July 20th, 1973. Bruce Lee was in Hong Kong, working on his film Game of Death. He went to the apartment of actress Betty Ting Pei to discuss the script. He complained of a headache. Ting Pei gave him a painkiller known as Equigesic, a common over-the-counter pill containing aspirin and meprobamate. Lee lay down for a nap and never woke up. He was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Bruce Lee was 32 years old. The official cause of death was ruled death by misadventure, specifically an acute cerebral edema or swelling of the brain, caused by a hypersensitive reaction to an ingredient in the painkiller. The meprobamate, the official inquest determined, had triggered a fatal allergic reaction. But the suddenness, the youth, and the sheer physicality of the victim made the verdict immediately suspect. How could the most physically fit man in the world die from a common headache pill? The theories quickly began to swirl. The curse of the Lee family. This ancient-sounding theory stemmed from Bruce Lee's own beliefs and the eerie tragedy that would later befall his son. It spoke of a family curse that haunted the men of the Lee lineage, a fatalistic idea that resonated with those who couldn't accept a mundane end for such a dynamic man. The mob assassination. Bruce Lee had made enemies. He was known for refusing to bow to the powerful triad organizations that controlled much of the Hong Kong film industry. Did he reject a powerful offer? Was his death a silent, devastating message to those who crossed the triad bosses? Did the drug he took contain a poison disguised as a common pill? The secret lover cover-up. The fact that Lee died in Betty Ting Pei's apartment and not at home with his wife Linda immediately led to accusations of a cover-up. It was Betty Ting Pei who gave him the pill. Was she pressured to administer something lethal? Or was she merely a convenient scapegoat for a larger plot? The public inquest was thorough, featuring testimony from top medical experts. Yet the question of why a massive, unprecedented amount of fluid swelled his brain remained a medical enigma. There were no immediate signs of a struggle, no evidence of foul play at the scene. Yet the lack of a clear, satisfying reason fueled decades of speculation. The official ruling stands, but the mystery of Bruce Lee's death is a deep, persistent wound in martial arts and film history. The ultimate symbol of physical mastery was destroyed by something unseen, silent, and entirely unexpected. Number 8. Bob Crane, the unsolved murder of a sitcom star. To millions, Bob Crane was the charming, wisecracking Colonel Hogan in the massively popular sitcom Hogan's Heroes. He was a household name, synonymous with lighthearted network television humor. But behind the scenes, Crane was a dark, compulsive double life that would ultimately lead to his violent, still unsolved end. The date was June 29, 1978. Bob Crane was not in Hollywood. He was in Scottsdale, Arizona, performing in a dinner theater production of Beginner's Luck.
He was staying in a cheap apartment when he missed his scheduled rehearsal. His co-star, John Carpenter, went to check on him. Carpenter entered the apartment and found Crane dead in his bed. He had been bludgeoned to death with a weapon that was never found. The official medical report cited blunt force trauma to the head as the cause of death. The scene was immediately baffling. There were no signs of forced entry. The murder weapon, believed to be a tripod, was missing. And the apartment, a far cry from the glamorous life of a TV star, reeked of a darker existence. The investigation quickly focused on John Carpenter. John Carpenter was Bob Crane's close and deeply strange friend. He was an electronics salesman who introduced Crane to the world of amateur pornography and video recording. The two spent years secretly filming and photographing their sexual encounters with various women. They were co-conspirators in Crane's dangerous obsession. Police knew the motive centered on this secret life. Crane had reportedly been attempting to distance himself from Carpenter and his activities, threatening to end their destructive partnership. Did Carpenter kill Crane to stop him from exposing their shared secrets and destroying his life? Carpenter was questioned extensively but released due to lack of physical evidence. The case went cold for 13 years. In 1990, the case was reopened. New forensic technology allowed investigators to re-examine a small blood smear found in Carpenter's car. While DNA testing was inconclusive at the time, an analyst testified that the blood sample was consistent with Bob Crane's. Carpenter was finally arrested and tried for murder in 1994. The trial was a sensation. The prosecution meticulously laid out the dark evidence of Crane's obsession and Carpenter's motive. But the defense successfully argued that the DNA evidence was too small and degraded to be definitive, creating a reasonable doubt. Carpenter was acquitted. He died 4 years later, still the primary, unconvicted suspect. The murder of Bob Crane remains officially unsolved. His death stands as a chilling reminder that the line between a public persona and private darkness can be deadly thin. The man who brought laughter to millions died alone, betrayed by a friend, and silenced by the secrets he desperately tried to keep hidden. Number 9. Natalie Wood, The Mystery on the Yacht. Natalie Wood was the child star who grew up to be one of Hollywood's most captivating Academy Award-winning leading ladies. Her career spanned decades, and her marriage to actor Robert Wagner was one of the most famous on-again, off-again relationships in Tinseltown history. Her final chapter, however, took place not on a soundstage, but on a 60-foot luxury yacht named the Splendour. The date was November 29, 1981. Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, and actor Christopher Walken, her co-star in the film Brainstorm, were spending the Thanksgiving weekend sailing near Catalina Island. The following morning, Wood was missing. Her body was later found floating in the water nearby. The official initial ruling was accidental drowning after she allegedly slipped trying to tie up a dinghy in the middle of the night. But the story from the yacht's occupants, the captain Dennis Daverin, and the evidence collected immediately turned the accident into a profound mystery. The key contradictions: the argument. The evening had been fueled by excessive alcohol and, crucially, a furious argument between Wood and Wagner. Christopher Walken later testified to the tension on board. The yacht's captain, Dennis Daverin, later admitted to hearing a violent, drunken fight just before Wood disappeared. Wagner was known for his volatile temper and deep jealousy over Wood's relationship with her co-stars. The bruises. Wood's body showed numerous bruises, including one on her cheek and several on her arms. While the coroner initially suggested these could have been sustained while falling into the water, later forensic experts concluded they were indicative of a struggle prior to entering the water. The delayed search. Wagner claimed he only noticed his wife was missing around 1:30 a.m. However, he delayed calling for help for over an hour. The captain, Dennis Daverin, later claimed in a tell-all book that Wagner forbade him from turning on the searchlight, stating he didn't want to alert anyone. Daverin became the key whistleblower. Over the years, he changed his story, culminating in his statement that Wagner was responsible for Wood's death, either directly or by contributing to the violent circumstances that caused her to fall in. Due to the new testimony and a fresh look at the evidence, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department reopened the case in 2011. In 2012, the original cause of death was formally changed from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. The crucial change acknowledged the pre-drowning injuries. Natalie Wood's husband, Robert Wagner, was named a person of interest in the investigation. To this day, he refuses to cooperate with the police. The tragic mystery of Natalie Wood is a story of wealth, jealousy, and the dark secrets that can be hidden far away from the shore. What happened on the Splendour that night is still known only by the few people on board, and until one of them speaks the full truth, Hollywood's beloved girl remains lost at sea.
Number 10. Brandon Lee, The Prop Gun and the Prophecy. The final story is perhaps the cruelest. It's not about an unsolved murder or a decades-old mystery, but about a terrifying, freak accident that felt predetermined. It's the story of Brandon Lee, son of Bruce Lee, and the tragedy that mirrored the curse that haunted his father. Brandon Lee was finally stepping out of his father's immense shadow, building a serious acting career focused on dramatic roles. His breakthrough was meant to be The Crow, a dark, gothic superhero film. The date was March 31, 1993. Lee was on the set in Wilmington, North Carolina, shooting a pivotal scene where his character, Eric Draven, is shot and killed by a gang of thugs. The scene required a close-up where a .44 Magnum revolver was fired directly at him. The gun was meant to fire a blank, a cartridge that contains gunpowder but no projectile. When the camera rolled, the blank was fired. Brandon Lee collapsed, shot in the abdomen. The scene was supposed to be fake, but the blood was real. Lee was rushed to the hospital and underwent hours of surgery, but it was too late. He died that evening at the age of 28. The subsequent investigation revealed an incredible, almost impossible chain of incompetence and negligence, a deadly two-part accident. Part 1, the dummy rounds. Earlier in the production, a scene required the gun to be loaded with dummy rounds, cartridges that look real but contain no powder and have a bullet crimped into the casing. To make these dummy rounds, the crew had removed the gunpowder from a live cartridge, but the primer, the small charge that ignites the gunpowder, was mistakenly left intact. When the gun was fired, the primer was strong enough to push the actual bullet, the projectile, out of the casing and lodge it just inside the barrel of the gun. Part 2, the blank. No one noticed the lodged bullet. Days later, when the death scene was filmed, the crew loaded the gun with a blank cartridge. When the blank fired, the explosive force, which is meant to be harmless, acted like a live cartridge, driving the already lodged bullet out of the barrel and straight into Brandon Lee's abdomen. The investigation ultimately ruled the death a tragic, utterly preventable accident caused by negligence on the part of the production crew. No criminal charges were filed. The production company did not face any significant criminal repercussions, though civil lawsuits were filed. Brandon Lee's death felt like the ultimate confirmation of the Lee family curse. Two legends, father and son, dead, tragically young, both under freak circumstances that defied normal explanation. His story is a different kind of Hollywood mystery, not of who did it, but how could the system allow it to happen? How could a safety-obsessed industry fail so catastrophically on a basic prop gun check? The finality of his loss serves as a permanent, blood-stained marker for the danger that lurks, even in the fabricated reality of a movie set. It ended his story, but it gave the crow an accidental, morbid immortality. The price of the dream. 10 names, 10 careers, 10 lives cut short in a city built on the illusion of forever.
What these stories reveal is that Hollywood is not just a place where dreams are made, but a place where innocence, sanity, and sometimes life itself are consumed. Whether it was Elizabeth Short falling victim to a nameless sadist, Peg Entwistle succumbing to despair, Marilyn Monroe threatening the powerful, or Natalie Wood caught in a drunken, fatal argument, the common thread is the shadow of celebrity. The bright light of the spotlight blinds us to the danger. We trust the official story, the police report, the easy explanation. But in Townsend Town, the people who know the most, the fixers, the partners, the studio heads, are often the ones with the most to lose, and they are the best equipped to engineer a perfect, quiet ending. These mysteries remind us of a powerful, painful truth. Fame is a fragile shield. It makes you immortal on screen, but it makes you terribly vulnerable in life. In the end, these icons were just people, scared, betrayed, or simply unlucky. They died under circumstances that still demand answers. Their cases may be cold, but the questions they raise about power, cover-ups, and the dark price of the Hollywood dream will never be truly closed.